My name is Hannah Blake, and I'm 35 years old. I live in Oregon with my son Miles, who just turned 12. Miles has spastic diplegia cerebral palsy, which mainly affects his legs. He's incredibly smart, compassionate, and the bravest person I know. I've spent the last decade raising him on my own after my husband Ethan died in a motorcycle accident. Miles was just 3 years old. If you've ever had to fight tooth and nail for someone you love, especially when that fight is against your own family, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Stories like ours need to be heard. The person I want to talk about is Monica, my sister-in-law. She's married to my younger brother Aaron, and while I used to think she was just blunt, I now know she's something else entirely. She's the reason my son ended up in the hospital a few months ago. Not by accident, by choice. But to explain what happened, I need to take you back a little. Ethan and I had just gotten used to the routines of raising a child with special needs when he passed. It was devastating. My parents tried to help, but they were grieving too. Aaron stepped up in a way I'll never forget. He was 27 then, full of energy and optimism, and he loved Miles like his own. Aaron was my anchor in those early days. He'd come by to mow the lawn, read stories to Miles, and bring dinner when I couldn't even think straight. I don't know if I would have survived those first few years without him. So when he met Monica at a tech conference and brought her home all starry-eyed, I was genuinely happy for him. At first, Monica was charming. She asked thoughtful questions about Miles. She helped with the dishes on Thanksgiving. She sent Miles a science kit for his birthday. I even remember thinking, maybe Aaron found someone as compassionate as he is. But things changed, slowly, subtly. It started with offhand remarks. During one dinner, when Miles was struggling to grip his fork, Monica said, "Isn't he too old to need help with that? I mean, my nephew is younger and eats like a champ." Aaron laughed awkwardly, tried to change the subject, but I saw the flash of shame in Miles's eyes. I should have said something then, but I didn't. Over time, Monica's comments got sharper. If we were out and Miles needed to rest, she'd sigh dramatically or make a show of checking her watch. Once she even suggested I look into those special residential schools that give parents their lives back. I was furious, but Aaron would always brush it off. She didn't mean it like that, or she's just not used to kids with disabilities. Aaron and Monica have 2 kids, Sophie, who's 14, and Caleb, who's 9. Sophie is an angel with Miles. She reads with him, helps him carry his backpack, and always includes him when they're together. Caleb is harder to read sweet one day, mimicking his mother's impatience the next. As time passed, Aaron's visits dropped off. From weekly to monthly, then to holidays only. Monica had a way of making me feel like a burden when I asked for help. And when I confronted Aaron, he just told me I was imagining it. Still, I kept trying for Miles's sake. He adored his cousins. He wanted to be part of the family. Then 3 months ago, Monica called me out of the blue. "We're planning a trip to Cascade Springs Amusement Park this Saturday," she said. "Sophie's been begging to bring Miles. I think it'd be good for him to have some fun with his cousins." My gut reaction was to say no. Cascade Springs is known for its extreme rides, long walking distances, and massive crowds. Not exactly ideal for a kid who wears braces and tires easily. "I'm not sure," I said. "A lot of the park isn't accessible. And Miles has very specific medical needs." "We'll stick to the gentler stuff," she said quickly. "He shouldn't miss out just because he's different. That would be discrimination, right?" That word hit me hard. Monica knew exactly how to play on my guilt, my constant fear that I was overprotective, that I was the reason Miles didn't get to be a normal kid. She added, "Aaron thinks it's a great idea too." I paused. Against every instinct in my body, I said yes. Miles lit up when I told him, with Sophie and Caleb. "Seriously?" he asked, grinning. "Yes," I said, trying to sound cheerful while my stomach twisted. "Just make sure to pace yourself, and we'll talk to Aunt Monica about what's safe and what's not." All week, Miles planned for the trip. He printed the park map, highlighted the carousel, the bumper cars, and the lazy river. He even practiced extra stretches to keep his muscles loose. I prepared like a field medic. Printed a folder with his diagnosis, emergency protocols, and medication schedule. Made a list of rides to avoid: no drops, no inversions, no high G-forces. Anything that could cause a spasm or stress his cardiovascular system. The day before, I called Monica. "He takes a muscle relaxant at noon," I explained. "It's in his backpack, clearly labeled. If he starts to feel tightness or nausea, he needs to sit down immediately and stretch." "I've raised 2 kids, Hannah," she interrupted. "I know how to handle a fun day out." "But Miles isn't..." I know what cerebral palsy is, she snapped. Don't be so dramatic. I should have canceled, right then. But instead, I said, just promise me you'll follow the list. She huffed. Yes, yes, we'll stick to the kiddie rides if that makes you feel better. That night, Aaron called. Monica told me you're worried. Of course I'm worried, I said. She's never taken his condition seriously. She's trying Han. This was her idea. I hope that's true, I replied, uncertain. But I need you to watch out for him. She will, Aaron said. Give her a chance. Saturday morning, Miles was dressed and ready before breakfast. His Captain Marvel shirt, his stretchable shorts, his custom sneakers. He must have asked me 5 times, "Are you sure it's okay?" I'm sure I said, even though I wasn't. When Monica pulled up, she honked instead of coming to the door. Sophie waved. Caleb grinned. Monica didn't even get out of the car. I helped Miles into the back seat and handed Monica the medical folder. Please read this, I said, and call me if anything seems off. She waved her hand. We'll be fine. Back by 6. As they drove off, Miles gave me a thumbs up through the window. I smiled and waved, praying I hadn't just made the worst mistake of my life. I tried to keep busy that morning. I had a freelance copywriting project due, and normally I could get lost in the flow of editing, but every few minutes I found myself checking my phone, refreshing my messages, listening for a ping, watching the clock. At 10:14 a.m., Monica texted, "Arrived? Not crowded. All good." At 11:01 a.m., Miles on the carousel. Sophie's with him. At 12:06 p.m., burger stand for lunch, took his meds. I felt a little better, briefly. The updates were short but plausible. Routine. I told myself that Monica had finally stepped up, that maybe she was trying. At 1:37 p.m., I received another message. Still walking around, everyone having fun, battery low, we'll text later. Then nothing. By 2:30, I was pacing. I called Monica voicemail. I called Sophie, no answer. I texted Caleb even though he barely used his phone. Nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid, that amusement parks have poor reception, that they were just caught up in the fun. But that knot in my gut, the one every mother knows, kept twisting tighter. At 4:22 p.m., my phone finally rang. It was Sophie. I answered before the first ring finished. Sophie? Her voice was shaky small. Aunt Hannah? Something happened to Miles. The world dropped out from under me. What happened? Where is he? He's at the first aid station. He passed out after a ride. He won't wake up. What ride? I said already, grabbing my car keys. The Cyclone, she whispered. The Cyclone. That was Cascade Springs' newest roller coaster. 3 vertical loops, a 100-foot drop, a G-force that made even healthy adults nauseous. I stopped cold. What I said stunned. You took him on the Cyclone. No, she said quickly. He said no, over and over. He begged. He showed Mom the list you made. But she said he was being dramatic. She told the ride guy it was fine. He was crying, Aunt Hannah. He was crying, and she made him go. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the phone. Where are you now? I snuck away. Mom took our phones after the ride, said it was a family day and to stop ruining it, but I took mine back. You did the right thing, sweetie, I said, forcing calm into my voice. I need you to go back to the first aid station. Tell the medic I'm Miles's mother and that I authorize emergency medical transport. Say he may be having an episode of autonomic dysreflexia. What? Autonomic dysreflexia. Just say that, okay? Tell them it's serious. Tell them I'm on my way and I'm calling 911 right now. I'm scared. You're being incredibly brave, I told her. Now go. Tell them. As we hung up, I called 911, barely managing to get the words out. Then I drove like I'd never driven before, cutting red lights, speeding past traffic, hands clenched around the wheel, as I prayed my son wasn't slipping away. At 4:49 p.m., I pulled up to Cascade Springs. I didn't care about parking. I just left the car half on a curb, grabbed my bag, and ran. The first aid station was near the food court. As I burst in, the first thing I saw was Miles lying on a cot, pale and unmoving. A medic hovered over him, adjusting monitors. Sophie was by his side, gripping his hand with tear-streaked cheeks. Caleb stood in the corner, looking confused and scared. Monica, on the other hand, was arguing with another medic. He's just overwhelmed, she was saying. He does this for attention. You don't need to make a scene. You have got to be kidding me, I snapped as I rushed past her. The medic looked up. You're his mother. Yes, what's his blood pressure? Spiking. He's sweating, his heart's racing. Based on what your niece told us and the symptoms, we suspect autonomic dysreflexia. I kneeled beside Miles. His skin was clammy and his lips had a bluish tinge. Hey baby, mommy's here, I whispered, taking his hand. Monica finally turned to me. Hannah, you're overreacting. It was just one ride. He needs to learn not to be so fragile. I stood slowly turning to face her. You put my disabled son on a roller coaster that you were explicitly told could kill him. He cried and begged, and you forced him anyway. You are not only unfit to be around him, you're a danger. Monica laughed tight and bitter. It was a learning moment. You coddle him. He needs to grow up. No, I said, shaking with rage. He needs protection from people like you. Just then the paramedics arrived. Thank God, I said, stepping back. One paramedic began assessing Miles while the other turned to me. We were told you'd authorized transport. Yes, I said. I'm riding with him. The other medic turned to Monica. Ma'am, we'll need to file a report. This may be a case of child endangerment. She scoffed. Excuse me. This is a misunderstanding. He's just sensitive. No, I said firmly. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's criminal neglect. As they loaded Miles onto the stretcher, he briefly opened his eyes. Mom, he whispered, barely audible. I'm here, sweetheart. You're going to be okay. He squeezed my hand faintly, then his eyes fluttered closed again. As we exited the station, I turned to Sophie. You saved his life. I'm so proud of you. She nodded, wiping her face. I'm sorry, Aunt Hannah. You have nothing to be sorry for. Monica does. And as we rode in the ambulance sirens blaring, I made a silent promise to my son. Whatever it took police court's hell itself, I was going to make sure this never happened to him again. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights, frantic footsteps, and shouted instructions. Miles was immediately wheeled into a trauma bay. A team of nurses and doctors swarmed him, attaching monitors, inserting an IV, checking vitals. One of them asked me rapid-fire questions about his condition, medications, recent symptoms. I answered like I was reading off a script because I was. I'd been preparing for emergencies like this since Miles was 2. It was every special needs parent's nightmare come true. And yet in that moment, I couldn't afford to break down. His blood pressure's dangerously high, one doctor said. Could be autonomic dysreflexia triggered by extreme stress. Exactly, I said. He was forced onto a high-intensity roller coaster despite being told not to go on anything like that. The doctor nodded grimly. We'll stabilize him with meds and monitor closely for the next 24 hours. As they worked, a hospital social worker arrived alongside 2 uniformed officers. One of them, a woman in her 50s with kind but firm eyes, introduced herself. I'm Officer Lacey. We've been alerted by the paramedics that this may be a case of child endangerment. Can you walk me through what happened? Yes, I said, my voice calm but tight. My son was taken to Cascade Springs today by his aunt, my sister-in-law, Monica Pierce. She was given clear medical instructions, both verbal and written, to avoid high-stress rides. Miles has cerebral palsy. He specifically told her no when she tried to get him on the cyclone. I pulled up the PDF I'd emailed Monica the night before and showed it to Officer Lacey. This document outlines all the rides and activities he cannot participate in. His condition is very specific. His muscles react unpredictably under certain stress levels. She ignored all of it. Do you believe she did this deliberately? The second officer asked. Absolutely, I said. She's made years of passive-aggressive comments about Miles being coddled or too dependent. She's mocked him before. She saw this as a moment to prove something, and now he's in a hospital bed. Officer Lacey took notes. We'll speak with your niece as well and collect statements from park staff. As she spoke, I noticed movement down the hallway. Monica. She stood just beyond the nurse's station holding Caleb's hand, eyes darting around like she was trying to find the narrative that would save her. Sophie followed close behind her face, pale eyes rimmed red. I need to see my nephew, Monica said loudly. I'm family. The nurse looked at her flatly. Only the mother is allowed back right now. Then she noticed me standing nearby. Hannah, how is he? Don't, I snapped, stepping toward her. You've done enough. Officer Lacey stepped in. Mrs. Pierce, we'd like to ask you some questions in private. Monica's expression twisted. Are you serious? You're treating me like a criminal. You put a medically vulnerable child on a dangerous ride after being told not to, I said. That's not a misunderstanding, Monica. That's neglect. That's cruelty. You're being dramatic again. He's fine, isn't he? No, he's not. He passed out. He couldn't breathe. He's still barely responsive. Jessica stepped forward, clutching her hoodie sleeves. Mom, you knew. He told you. You said he was being a baby. I tried to stop you. Monica turned on her. Sophie, don't start. You don't understand how these things work. Sophie understood better than you did, I cut in. She's the one who called me. If she hadn't, he might have... I couldn't finish that sentence. The image of what could have happened clamped around my throat like ice. The officers took Monica aside as I turned to Sophie. I'm proud of you, I said quietly. You did everything right. She burst into tears. I was so scared. He looked so pale and he wouldn't wake up, and Mom kept saying it was fine. It wasn't your job to fix it, I said, but you still did. A few minutes later, a nurse approached me. He's awake, she said. He's asking for you. My knees nearly gave out from relief. Inside the room, Miles looked tiny and pale under the hospital blanket. He had a heart monitor on his chest and an oxygen line under his nose. His eyes fluttered open when I stepped in. Mom, I'm here, I said, taking his hand. You're safe. I told her, he whispered. I told her I couldn't. She made me go. I know, baby. I know. You did everything right. This wasn't your fault. He winced. My chest hurts. They're giving you medicine to help your body calm down, I said, stroking his hair. You're in the best place right now. He nodded, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. I sat with him in silence, holding his hand, rage boiling just beneath the surface of my calm. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was ready to act. As I stepped out of the room, Officer Lacey met me again. We've taken preliminary statements from your niece from Park Security, and we're reviewing footage. Based on what we've heard, the district attorney will likely pursue charges of reckless child endangerment. Good, I said without hesitation. I want to press charges. You understand this will create serious tension within your family, she said. Are you prepared for that? I'm not prepared to bury my son, I replied. Monica made her choices. Now she faces the consequences. The officer nodded. We'll keep you informed of the next steps. And as Monica was escorted out of the hospital, still protesting, still minimizing, I felt the first ripple of a new reality forming. A reality where I no longer stayed silent. A reality where Miles' safety came before family appearances. A reality where justice, no matter how painful, would be served. The following morning, the fluorescent lights in the hospital still buzzed overhead, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just scared anymore, I was focused. Miles was resting more peacefully, his vitals stable, though the doctors wanted to keep him for another 24 hours to monitor for lingering symptoms or delayed reactions. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see him slumped over, pale and unconscious. It replayed like a loop. Around 10 a.m., a soft knock came at the hospital room door. My parents. They had driven all night from Eugene after I called them in a panic the day before. My mother rushed to Miles's side, eyes wet as she gently kissed his forehead. My father followed quietly, his usual warmth replaced by a somber, protective energy. How's our boy? He asked, kneeling beside the bed. Getting better, I said, but he's not out of the woods yet. And Monica, he asked, standing again, his voice already bracing. Spoke to police. She's being investigated for reckless endangerment. She should be, he muttered. We stepped out into the hallway so Miles could sleep. I quickly filled them in on the timeline, the ignored warnings, the forced ride, the fainting, the medic's report. She knew, I said. She knew exactly what she was doing. My father clenched his jaw. I always had a bad feeling about that woman. Erin fell for the act, but there was always something cold about her. She didn't just act out of ignorance, I added. It was about control, about proving something. We stood in silence for a moment until I got a text from Jessica. Can I visit Miles, just me? After checking with the nurse and ensuring Miles was awake and ready for a short visit, I texted back. Of course, you saved him, Jess. He wants to see you. 30 minutes later, she arrived at the hospital room alone. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her eyes were tired behind her glasses. She looked older than 14 in that moment, like someone who had been carrying the weight of guilt that never belonged to her. Miles smiled when he saw her. Hey, dork. Jessica laughed, the sound a little shaky. Hey, nerd. You scared me. Not my fault, he mumbled with a grin. She stepped inside and pulled something out of her bag, a small keychain-sized plush of Captain Marvel. I brought your backup guardian. She can keep an eye on you while you sleep. Thanks, Miles said, hugging it close. As the kids talked, Jessica eventually pulled me aside outside the room. My mom took my phone after the hospital, she whispered. Said I betrayed her. But my dad gave it back this morning. He said I was brave. I blinked back tears. You were. She's mad at everyone, Jessica continued. Screaming, crying, saying you're trying to destroy the family. She destroyed that when she chose her pride over Miles' life, I said. Jessica hesitated. Dad's not staying at the house. He left last night. Said he needed time to think. I inhaled sharply. That was new. Erin, the eternal peacemaker, was finally pulling away. I don't know what's going to happen, Jessica admitted. But if things get worse, could I stay with you for a while? I squeezed her shoulder. You'll always have a place with us. Later that day, a neurologist came in to do a final round of tests. The doctor explained that while Miles was stabilizing, the event had triggered a severe response in his autonomic system. He'd likely need changes to his therapy regimen, more frequent monitoring, and a follow-up in 2 weeks. The good news, she said, is that there doesn't appear to be permanent damage. But emotionally, this was traumatic for both of you. As if to echo her point, Miles woke up in the middle of the night, whimpering from a nightmare. "Don't make me go again," he sobbed in his sleep. "Don't strap me in." I held him close until his breathing slowed. His body was tense for hours, even as he rested. The following afternoon, he was discharged with a folder full of follow-up instructions and emergency contacts. We returned home to our quiet house. My mother insisted on staying with us for a few days to help. Just as I was settling Miles on the couch, my phone rang. It was Detective Claire, the officer in charge of the case. "We've obtained the security footage," she said. "It confirms your niece's story." Miles was visibly distressed. There's audio of him pleading not to get on the ride and video of Monica physically guiding him through the line while ignoring a ride attendant's question about his condition. I closed my eyes. Several witnesses are also willing to testify that she dismissed his objections and made mocking comments about his melodrama. "We have enough to move forward." "Do it," I said. "Press charges." "Are you prepared for backlash?" she asked gently. "Extended family legal defense strategies, the whole process." "I'm not doing this to win a fight," I replied. "I'm doing this so my son and other kids like him don't get treated like they're disposable." After we hung up, I walked back into the living room where Miles was watching cartoons. He looked up at me. "Mom." "Yeah, baby. Is Aunt Monica going to jail?" I sat next to him, choosing my words carefully. "I don't know yet, but she's being held responsible for what she did." "I don't want her to go to jail," he said softly. "I just don't want to go anywhere with her ever again." "You won't, I promised. You'll never have to." And as I said it, I realized that protecting him wasn't just about physical safety. It was about showing him that when someone hurts you, especially someone who's supposed to care, you don't just forgive and forget. You hold the line, you stand your ground, and you show the next generation what love with boundaries truly looks like. 2 days after we returned home from the hospital, the front doorbell rang. It was Aaron. He looked exhausted. His usual neatly trimmed beard was scruffy, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. He held a grocery bag in one hand and a duffel slung over his shoulder. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch before letting him in. "I got your messages," he said quickly. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't stop picturing him like that. In that cot, pale, hooked up to wires. Then imagine how it felt watching it happen. I snapped, my voice low but sharp. Or better yet, imagine being the one it happened to. He winced. "I deserve that." "You do," I said, crossing my arms. "What are you doing here, Aaron?" "I wanted to check on Miles," he said, "and to talk." I studied him for a moment, then opened the door wider. 5 minutes, in the kitchen. He followed me inside, and I gestured for him to sit while I filled 2 mugs with coffee. I wasn't doing this out of politeness. I needed something to hold so I wouldn't throw something instead. Aaron sat down at the table, hands folded tightly in front of him. "I saw the security footage," he said. "The police showed it to me yesterday. I couldn't believe what I was seeing." She was laughing, Hannah, laughing while he cried. I said nothing. "I knew she had problems with him," Aaron continued. "I thought they were just comments, frustrations. I never imagined she'd do something so deliberate," I offered. He nodded. "Yes, so cruel." "That's because you've been excusing her for years," I said. "Every eye roll, every dig, every time she excluded us. You called it misunderstanding, sensitivity, and I let it go. For you, for family. And now look where that's gotten us." Aaron buried his face in his hands. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I'm just asking you to believe me when I say I didn't know it was this bad." "I don't need an apology, Aaron. I need to know what you're going to do now." He took a breath. "I asked Monica to leave the house," he said. "She's staying with her sister. I'm filing for legal separation. I don't know yet if it'll become a divorce, but I can't go back to that. Not after this." It wasn't the sweeping redemption arc I'd hoped for, but it was a start. "And the kids?" I asked. "Jessica wants to stay with you for now, if that's still okay." "Of course." "She's furious with Monica. Caleb's confused, but he's asking a lot of questions. I'm trying to be honest with him, but not too much too fast." I nodded slowly. "Good, keep doing that." "I want to be there for Miles again," Aaron added. "If you'll let me. I miss him. I miss you." There was pain in his voice. Regret finally untangled from pride. I didn't soften, but I also didn't shut the door. "Then show up," I said. "Learn about his condition. Come to his appointments. Listen when I tell you something is serious." I will, he said, eyes shining. I swear it. That evening, Aaron came with me to Miles's room. He sat gingerly on the edge of the bed while Miles looked up at him with wary eyes. Hey, champ, Aaron said, voice trembling. How are you feeling? Okay, Miles said quietly. Mom says I might need new stretches, though. Aaron nodded. I can learn them. You can teach me, and I just wanted to say I'm sorry, buddy, for not being there, for letting things get this bad. Miles looked at him for a long time, then asked, Are you mad at me? Aaron's face crumpled. Oh, God, no. No, Miles. You didn't do anything wrong. This wasn't your fault. You tried to say no. You told the truth, and that was brave. Miles nodded slowly, then offered a tiny smile. Okay. Later that night, after Aaron left, I checked my phone and found a slew of messages from extended family cousins, aunts, old friends. Some were supportive, I can't believe what she did. You were right to call the police. Some were not family, doesn't press charges on family. There must have been another way. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Monica meant well. I didn't respond to any of them, but I did screenshot them, because I had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time I'd be accused of overreacting. And I needed to remind myself that protecting Miles was worth every ounce of backlash. The next morning, I got a call from Detective Claire. Monica has officially been charged with felony child endangerment. The DA believes there's ample evidence to proceed. Good, I said. Let me know when I need to appear. And just like that, everything became real. There would be a court date, testimony, lawyers, and Monica, who had spent years whispering that Miles wasn't enough, was finally going to have to answer for what she did. A week later, we received the official court summons. Monica's arraignment was scheduled for the following Tuesday at the county courthouse. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by folders, Miles' medical records, doctor's notes, printouts of the messages I'd sent Monica, and the instruction sheet she'd never read. Jessica had gone to bed early, but I could hear her quietly talking to Miles in his room. They were watching one of their favorite superhero shows. I could hear their laughter through the wall, soft, cautious, like they were both still learning how to feel safe again. I wasn't just nervous about court. I was bracing for the backlash. Because once charges became official, people would take sides. Family always does. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one sweeping things under the rug for the sake of peace. The next morning, I dressed carefully dark slacks, a navy blouse hair pulled into a sleek bun. Not flashy, not apologetic, just strong. My parents stayed home with Miles and Jessica. He still wasn't ready to handle crowds, especially tense ones. Neither was she. When I arrived at the courthouse, Aaron was already there, sitting stiffly on a bench outside the courtroom. He stood when he saw me. She's inside, he said, with her lawyer. He looked pale, like the walls were closing in. You don't have to sit with her, I said gently. I'm not, he replied. I'm with you and Miles. No more fence sitting. We stepped into the courtroom together, but sat on opposite sides of the aisle, a physical symbol of everything that had fractured between us. Monica sat at the defense table dressed in beige slacks and a muted blouse, her makeup toned down, her posture carefully composed. But she didn't turn around, not once. The hearing was brief. The charges felony child endangerment were read aloud. Monica's attorney entered a plea of not guilty and requested a continuance to prepare for trial. The judge accepted the motion and set a future court date. Then, as the hearing adjourned, Monica did something unexpected. She stood, walked over to where I was gathering my things, and leaned in as if we were just having a civil conversation at a family barbecue. Hannah, she said in a low voice, her expression forced into concern, this has gone far enough. I made a mistake, but think about what this is doing to our family. I stepped back. I am thinking about my family. I'm thinking about my son who trusted you, who begged you to stop, and who could have died because you thought your pride mattered more than his life. Her eyes narrowed. It was a roller coaster, not a murder attempt. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. My voice dropped to a quiet, firm tone. He was unconscious. Doctors said he could have gone into full cardiac arrest. He has nightmares every night. That's not just a mistake, Monica. That's trauma. Her lawyer, noticing the tension, stepped between us. Let's go, he muttered, ushering her away. Outside, the press had already gathered. It was a small local crew, nothing major, but they'd caught wind of the story. Disabled child hospitalized after amusement park incident was already circulating. I kept my head down and didn't comment, but I heard Monica's lawyer giving a statement. This was a family misunderstanding blown out of proportion. A loving aunt trying to include her nephew in a family outing. Back at home, I watched the story unfold online. To my surprise, the majority of public comments were supportive. People were outraged not at me but at Monica. Parents of kids with disabilities flooded my inbox with messages of solidarity. One wrote, "My brother let his wife exclude my autistic son from every family event for years. I never stood up. I wish I had. Thank you for doing what so many of us couldn't." Another said, "You're not overreacting, you're protecting, there's a difference." For the first time in weeks, I felt less alone. A few days later, I got a call from Marcus, a program director at Voices for Ability, a local nonprofit focused on advocating for families with disabled children. He'd heard about our story through a community network and invited me to an upcoming family gathering at an accessible park. "It's important for your son to know he's not the only one," Marcus said. "And honestly, it's important for you too. Advocacy can be isolating, but you're not alone." I thanked him and wrote down the details. Then, with Miles's approval, I shared a short post on my private Facebook page, explaining what had happened, not the court drama, just the basics. That Miles had been hospitalized after an unsafe incident, that I'd taken action, and that we were focusing now on healing and accountability. Within hours, the post was shared dozens of times. More parents reached out, some strangers, some old friends who quietly admitted they'd seen similar red flags in their own families. "You gave us language," one woman messaged me. "What you described, covert ableism, that's what's been happening to my son for years." I read each message aloud to Miles that evening, sitting beside him on the couch while he worked on a new Lego build. He smiled a little, then asked, "Do you think Aunt Monica will ever say she's sorry?" I paused. "I don't know," I said truthfully, "but whether she does or not, we're going to be okay." And I meant it. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't hoping for anyone else to do the right thing. I was doing it myself. The weeks following the arraignment were a whirlwind of legal preparation, emotional fallout, and careful family navigation. Monica had been released pending trial, but was ordered by the judge to have no contact with Miles or me. A temporary protective order was issued, and I filed to make it permanent. Aaron, true to his word, had moved forward with legal separation. He and Monica were no longer living under the same roof, and he was seeking temporary primary custody of Jessica and Caleb while the investigation continued. Jessica had moved into our guest room. She was adjusting better than I expected, helping with dinner, studying with Miles, even coming with us to his therapy appointments. The girl who once tiptoed around conflict was now asking deeper questions, standing firmer in her truth. One evening after Miles had gone to bed and I was folding laundry in the living room, Jessica hesitated in the hallway before speaking. "Aunt Hannah," she said quietly, "can I ask something kind of hard?" "Of course." She bit her lip. "Do you think my mom actually regrets what she did? Or is she just sorry she got caught?" I paused, placing the folded shirt on the coffee table. "I think your mom regrets the consequences," I said. "But true regret, real change that comes when someone sees who they hurt, not just how their life got harder." Jessica nodded slowly. She's been posting stuff on social media, like about how this is a witch hunt and how you turned the family against her. My jaw tightened. I hadn't checked Monica's profiles in days, but now I didn't have to. She posted pictures of Miles. Jessica continued, her voice tense, from years ago, saying stuff like, "I loved him like my own. I tried to give him a normal life." And people are commenting, calling you bitter. One even said you're using Miles for attention. I sat back, my stomach churning. Using him? He nearly died. "Thank you for telling me," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "That hurts. But I'm not going to engage with it. That's what people do when they want to deflect blame. They spin a story." Jessica sniffed. "I'm sorry." "Hey," I said, gently reaching over to squeeze her hand. "You don't have to apologize for your mom's choices. You've done everything right." "I just hate that people believe her." "Some will," I admitted, "but the truth will hold. It always does." The next day, Miles had a follow-up with Dr. Kendall, his trauma therapist, while he played with modeling clay and quietly narrated a story about superheroes on a hospital spaceship. I met with her privately. "He's doing okay," she said. "A bit more withdrawn in unfamiliar environments, hypervigilant in crowds. We're working on grounding techniques and giving him tools to speak up when he feels unsafe." "Do you think he should testify?" I asked. The question had been burning in my mind since the DA mentioned the possibility. He remembers everything, but I don't want to re-traumatize him. Dr. Kendall shook her head. "I don't recommend it. The court has enough evidence, and testifying could force him to relive too much too soon. Let the adults fight this battle." I nodded, relieved. Outside the office, Miles was waiting in the hallway, still holding his clay figure. "She said I'm doing better," he told me proudly. "She said I'm brave." "You are," I said, smiling. "More than you know." As summer stretched on, our home became a haven. Jessica and Miles grew closer. Caleb visited a few weekends under Aaron's supervision. We went on nature walks, visited an aquarium with accessible exhibits, and even started planning a trip to the coast, a first for Miles. One Saturday afternoon, we were at Voices for Abilities family picnic. The park was fully accessible with paved trails, adaptive swings, and quiet sensory zones. I was chatting with Marcus, the program director, when he asked, "Have you ever thought about speaking publicly?" I blinked. "Me?" "Yeah," he said. "You've been through hell and stood your ground. Parents need to hear that, especially the ones who are still being silenced by their own families." I hesitated. The thought of standing in front of a crowd sharing our story terrified me, but a different kind of fear. The kind that meant it mattered. "I'll think about it," I said. That evening, as we were packing up, Miles tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, yeah, buddy. Do you think I'll ever like roller coasters again?" I knelt beside him. "Maybe, maybe not. But you never have to go on one again if you don't want to." He looked thoughtful. "I think I like the carousel better anyway." We both laughed. And for the first time since the incident, it felt like we weren't just surviving. We were beginning to live again. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the second week of October. As the date approached, the pressure from extended family started mounting. First, it was an email from my cousin Rachel, whom I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Hannah, I know you've been through a lot, but maybe this could be handled privately. Monica's devastated. Families fight, but court is a big step. Think about the kids." Then a phone call from Aunt Linda, Monica's staunchest defender. "Honey, I'm not saying what she did was right, but charges, courtrooms, what happened to second chances?" Even my mother, who'd been firmly on my side since day one, began gently probing. "Are you sure this is the only way, Hannah? You've already made your point? Maybe it's time to move on." But I wasn't looking to make a point. I was seeking accountability. "I'm not doing this out of revenge," I told my mother one evening while we were folding towels. "This is about setting a boundary that was crossed so violently it nearly cost Miles his life." She nodded, lips pressed tight. "I know, sweetheart. I just hate what it's doing to the family." "So do I said. But we were already broken. This just brought the cracks into the light." The day of the hearing, the courthouse buzzed with a quiet, contained energy. The gallery wasn't full, but there were enough people to make my heart race. Monica sat at the defense table again, this time less composed. Her hair wasn't as perfectly curled, and her blouse was wrinkled at the collar. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. The judge confirmed that the charges were being pursued as a felony. Monica's lawyer argued for a reduced charge misdemeanor community service therapy, but the DA wasn't budging. The park footage, witness testimony, and medical evidence painted a clear picture. This wasn't a mistake. It was a willful act of endangerment. After the hearing outside the courthouse, Monica approached me with her lawyer trailing awkwardly behind. "Hannah," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it, "please, this has gone far enough." I stood my ground. "It went too far when you dragged my son onto a ride that could have killed him." She glanced around, her eyes darting toward the small cluster of reporters and onlookers. "You're tearing this family apart." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You did that. When you decided my son's safety was less important than your pride." Monica's face hardened. "It was just a roller coaster. I thought he'd be fine." "And you were wrong," I said simply. "And now you're going to face the consequences of that choice." As she turned away, Jessica appeared at my side. She'd been sitting in the back of the courtroom with Aaron, watching it all unfold. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I am now," I said. A few days later, Monica's attorney contacted the DA's office with a plea offer. She would plead guilty to a reduced charge of misdemeanor child endangerment. In exchange, she would receive probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory disability education. The DA called me to discuss it. "I won't oppose it," I said. "But only if there's a restraining order that keeps her away from Miles indefinitely." The agreement was finalized that same week. The judge approved the deal. Monica would serve 2 years of probation and complete her community service at an adaptive sports program. She was also barred from contacting Miles in any form, text, call, message, in person for at least 5 years. When we left the courthouse that day, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt resolved. I hadn't won anything. I had drawn a line, a boundary that would protect my son, even if it cost me the comfort of keeping the family intact. That night, as Miles and Jessica watched a movie in the living room, I sat with Aaron on the back patio. He held a mug of coffee, staring at the yard we used to play in as kids. "I filed for divorce," he said, breaking the silence. "And I'm seeking full custody. I turned to look at him. Are you sure? I can't raise my kids in a house where sorry only comes after a consequence, he said. They deserve better. He took a sip and added, Jessica wants to stay with you through the end of the semester if that's okay. Caleb too, part-time, just until things settle. Of course, I said. We sat quietly for a few more minutes, the cool October air brushing against our skin. Then Aaron said something I didn't expect. Thank you. For doing what I didn't have the courage to. I nodded slowly. Let's just make sure we never need courage like that again. Inside, Miles laughed at something Jessica said. The sound was clear, full unburdened. It didn't erase what had happened, but it was proof of something better growing in its place. The weeks after the plea deal were quieter, but no less intense. Monica's name still floated around social circles, especially after a few local news outlets picked up the story and ran a short piece about the court resolution. There were no mugshots or dramatic headlines, just a simple paragraph about a woman being sentenced to probation for endangering a child with disabilities. Still, it was enough to stir up conversation in our community. Some neighbors stopped me at the grocery store or sent quiet texts of support. I didn't know the full story. I'm so sorry, Hannah. Thank you for standing up. We all needed to see that. But not everyone was supportive. A few old family friends, people I hadn't heard from in years, sent messages that were laced with guilt-tripping. Families handle these things privately. You really couldn't just talk it out. Talk it out, I thought. If words could have stopped Monica, Miles would have never ended up in that ambulance. Miles, meanwhile, was making remarkable progress in therapy. His nightmares became less frequent, and he started opening up more to Dr. Kendall during sessions. I'm scared it'll happen again, he told her one week. That someone else will make me do something I can't do. And what will you do if someone tries that? She asked gently. I'll tell them no, he said. And if they don't listen, I'll call my mom. It was a small moment, but it hit me like a wave. Not just because he trusted me, but because he trusted himself to speak up. Jessica settled easily into our household, and so did Caleb on the weekends. They both adjusted to the routines, meals, homework time, even the occasional game night when we all piled into the living room with popcorn and card games. One evening after the kids had gone to bed, Jessica lingered in the kitchen. I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up, she said shyly. Yeah, I want to go into special education, she said, because of Miles. I want to make sure kids like him feel safe in school, included. I blinked back tears. That's not weird, sweetheart. That's beautiful. She looked relieved. I was afraid you'd think I was just overcompensating. Not at all. I think you're growing into someone really strong. Someone who wants to make the world better because you've seen how it can go wrong. Jessica nodded and gave me a quick hug before disappearing down the hall. Later that week, I got a call from Community College of North Oregon. Marcus from Voices for Ability had referred me to a nursing professor there who was looking for guest speakers for an upcoming class on pediatric disabilities and family advocacy. I'm not a professional, I told the professor. You're exactly what we need, she said, someone who's lived it. I agreed nervously. And when the day came, I stood in front of a class of future nurses, my palms sweaty, my throat dry, and told them what it meant to be the parent of a child with cerebral palsy. I talked about medical fatigue, about insurance battles, about being gaslit by family, about watching someone you love be treated like an inconvenience. And then I told them about the day my son almost died because someone decided she knew better. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one student raised her hand. What do you wish every medical professional understood about parents like you? I didn't hesitate. That we're not being dramatic, I said. We're just tired of being the only ones in the room listening. The applause wasn't loud, but it was sincere. That night I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. Not just survival, not just defense, but direction. Miles was waiting on the porch when I pulled in Jessica and Caleb beside him. They waved like I'd just come back from a great adventure. And in a way I had, because for the first time in a long time I wasn't just fighting the world. I was starting to change it. 3 months after the court case concluded, I received an unexpected email. It was from Monica, or more precisely from her probation officer, who was reaching out on Monica's behalf. As part of her mandated rehabilitation process, Ms. Pierce is participating in supervised restorative accountability. She has expressed interest in issuing a formal apology, with your consent, and under therapeutic supervision. This would be entirely voluntary on your part, and is not required under the terms of her plea deal. I stared at the screen for a long time. My gut reaction was no, absolutely not. She had her chance. She had many chances. But something held me back from immediately deleting it. Later that day, I brought it up during Miles' next therapy appointment. After his session with Dr. Kendall ended, I stayed behind to discuss the request. Would there be any value, I asked, in letting her say what she needs to say? Dr. Kendall was thoughtful. Only if it's something you or Miles are emotionally prepared for. An apology doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it brings more pain. But if done with proper support, it can help closure happen. I brought it up to Miles that evening. To my surprise, he was calm. I don't think I want to see her alone, he said. But maybe, if you're there, and if it's somewhere safe. I think I have things I need to say too. I blinked, surprised. Are you sure? He nodded. Dr. Kendall says it might help me feel stronger, like I'm not scared anymore. So we said yes. And it was arranged with the utmost care, a private room at the counseling center, 2 therapists present a time limit and an exit strategy in case anything went wrong. When Monica walked in, I barely recognized her. Her hair was tied back simply, no makeup. Clothes, casual and wrinkled. She looked thinner, somehow, smaller. Her eyes darted around nervously. "Hi, Miles," she said softly. "Thank you for letting me come." Miles sat upright in his chair, his braces peeking out from beneath his jeans. He didn't respond, just watched her. "I wanted to apologize," she continued. "What I did at Cascade Springs was wrong. I ignored your words, your feelings, and your needs. I thought I knew better. I didn't. I hurt you. And I'm truly sorry." Miles's voice was clear and steady when he finally spoke. "You called me dramatic. You told me to man up. I told you I couldn't go on that ride. You didn't care." Monica winced. "I know, and I was wrong." "You said I needed to be normal," he added. "But I am normal, just not your kind of normal." Her hands trembled in her lap. "I didn't understand cerebral palsy. I thought I did. I thought if I just pushed you, you'd catch up. I realize now how ignorant that was. The disability education classes, they showed me how much I didn't know, and how much I hurt you by pretending I did." Miles glanced at me, then back at her. "I don't want you in my life right now. Maybe not ever." "I understand," she said. "But I don't want you to go to jail," he added softly. "I just want you to learn and not hurt anyone else." I looked at my son and felt a swell of emotion so deep I could hardly speak. Compassion, boundaries, maturity, he was modeling things that most adults never master. After the meeting, we went out for ice cream. Miles ordered mint chip and asked if he could bring some home for Jessica. "Of course," I said. "You were incredible today." He shrugged. "I just said the truth." "That's what made it powerful," I told him. A few weeks later, Monica sent a written apology through the therapist. It was more detailed, less performative. She had also started volunteering at a center for children with physical disabilities as part of her community service. I didn't reply. Closure doesn't require conversation. It just requires clarity. Meanwhile, our family kept growing not by blood, but by truth. Jessica continued thriving in school. Caleb began joining us for overnight weekends, and Miles even asked to start swim lessons again, this time at an adaptive aquatic center. Dr. Kendall smiled when I updated her during our next check-in. "Resilience isn't just surviving," she said. "It's choosing to build joy even after the storm." That night, Miles and I lay on the couch watching old home videos, his first steps with braces, his 3rd birthday, when he tried to blow out candles sideways, laughing the entire time. "I don't want to forget what happened," he said. "But I don't want it to be the biggest part of my story either." "It won't be," I promised him. "It's just one chapter." He leaned against my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next disaster. I felt like I was standing at the start of something new. The following spring, life began to feel, dare I say it, normal again. Miles had been cleared for low-impact physical activity and was thriving in his adaptive swim program. Jessica was applying to high schools with strong special education advocacy programs. Caleb, once quiet and unsure around Miles, had started joining his cousin for video game nights and even helped him build a Lego wheelchair ramp for their playroom. Our family looked different now, smaller in some ways, stronger in the ones that mattered. We planned Miles's 13th birthday party at a local, accessible community center. It was the first large gathering we'd hosted since everything happened, and I was nervous. Would people come? Would it be awkward? But when the day arrived, the turnout was beautiful. Jessica helped decorate with superhero streamers. Caleb handed out party hats. Aaron brought a cake with Miles's favorite Marvel characters on it. My parents came early to help set up chairs and organize the food table. Even Marcus from Voices for Ability showed up with a handmade birthday card signed by every staff member. Miles beamed as he opened presents, played adaptive dodgeball, and showed off his latest swimming medal. But the moment that struck me most was when my father stood up during cake and clinked his glass. To my grandson Miles, he said, raising his voice just enough to hush the room, who's taught us all that courage doesn't always roar. And to my daughter Hannah, who reminded us what it looks like to protect someone with everything you've got. The applause was soft but genuine. Miles turned pink from the attention, ducking behind his cake like a shy celebrity. I hugged my dad tightly afterward. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet again, I was putting away leftover decorations when Miles walked into the kitchen holding his new Captain Marvel action figure. "Mom," he asked, "do you think I'll ever forgive Aunt Monica?" I looked at him for a long moment, then pulled out a chair and sat beside him. "Forgiveness is complicated," I said. "It doesn't mean forgetting, or pretending something didn't happen. Sometimes it just means making peace with it so it doesn't control you anymore." He nodded. "I'm not ready yet." "That's okay," I said. "You get to decide if and when. No one else can tell you how to heal." He thought for a moment, then asked, "Do you think she really changed?" I sighed. "I think she started the process. But change is more than classes or apologies. It's what you do next. It's how you treat people when no one's watching." Miles tilted his head thoughtfully. "Then I guess we'll wait and see." I smiled. Smart answer. The following weekend, Jessica got a call from her school counselor inviting her to speak at a community education panel about student experiences with family disability dynamics. "They want me to talk about what it was like being the sibling of a disabled kid, even if he's my cousin," she explained, "and how it changed how I see the world." I couldn't have been prouder. "You'll be amazing," I told her. As spring turned to summer, the ripples of what we'd been through began to fade, but the lessons didn't. We celebrated small things a week without nightmares. A therapy session where Miles volunteered to share the first time he rolled himself up the school ramp without asking for help. He was becoming his own advocate brick by brick. And I was learning that motherhood, especially for a child with unique needs, wasn't just about shielding them from harm. It was about empowering them to believe in their worth, their boundaries, and their right to be safe and respected. One night, as Miles was brushing his teeth, I found a small sheet of paper taped inside his closet. It was a list in his handwriting. "Things I am allowed to say no to. Rides that hurt. People who laugh when I say stop. Adults who call me dramatic. Anything that makes my body feel wrong. Anyone who says I don't belong." I stared at the list, hand on my heart. He was doing the work. He was healing, and in his own quiet, courageous way. He was teaching the rest of us how to heal too. 1 year after the Cascade Springs incident, life had not just moved on, it had transformed. Miles was stronger, more confident, and beginning to own his identity in a way that left me in awe. He still faced challenges, sure, but he also swam laps with his adaptive team, helped organize an accessibility audit at his school, and wrote a short story that his English teacher submitted to a youth writing contest. It was titled "The Day I Said No." Meanwhile, I had stepped further into advocacy. I was invited to speak at several regional conferences on parenting children with disabilities, and I even co-facilitated a new support group for parents navigating family-based ableism. We called it Unseen Battles, because that's what so many of us were fighting: conflicts no one else recognized, invisible grief. No one else acknowledged emotional injuries that didn't leave bruises but cut just as deep. Jessica, now fully adjusted to her new school, had joined the Student Inclusion Council and was shadowing a special ed teacher 1 day a week. She talked about applying to colleges with strong education programs. Caleb was thriving too. His weekends with us had become something he looked forward to, and slowly, gently, his relationship with Miles was mending. They had started playing wheelchair basketball together at the rec center. I caught them making up team names one afternoon: the Rolling Rockets and the Blaze Busters. But perhaps the biggest change came in my relationship with myself. Because for the first time in over a decade, I allowed myself to hope, not cautiously, not with strings attached, but fully, honestly, out loud. I even started dating again. His name was Daniel. We met at a fundraiser for Voices for Ability. He was a landscape architect who specialized in accessible community spaces. When he found out about Miles, his response was simple and sincere. "Awesome. What kind of ramps does he like?" No pity, no condescension, just respect. Miles was skeptical at first. He'd grown wary of adults who appeared kind on the surface but didn't really see him. But Daniel was different. He let Miles show him how his braces worked. He waited when Miles needed time to finish a sentence. And most importantly, he never once talked over him. On our 4th dinner together, as we were getting ready to leave the restaurant, Miles whispered in my ear, "You can date him. He's not annoying." It might have been the highest praise any man had ever received. Our family was still healing. There were moments, unexpected memories, lingering anxiety shifts in behavior that reminded me trauma leaves deep roots. But there was laughter too, and safety, and space to feel whatever came without fear of being dismissed. And that more than anything was what we'd fought for. One warm April afternoon, we gathered for a family picnic at a fully accessible park. Jessica and Caleb tossed a frisbee, while Miles helped Daniel grill burgers using a long-handled spatula designed for easier grip. Aaron arrived late holding a tub of potato salad and looking a little lighter, more settled. He'd finalized the divorce 3 months earlier and was now in counseling himself, something he admitted he should have done years ago. "You were right," he told me one day, "about everything. I kept choosing comfort over truth, and I nearly lost my kids because of it." But he hadn't lost them. He was rebuilding with honesty this time. After lunch, Miles and I sat on a bench watching the others play. His legs rested on a foam pad we carried with us, now his braces loosened just enough for comfort. "Mom," he said, "do you think bad people know they're being bad?" "Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes they think they're helping, or that they're right. But if someone's hurting you and they don't stop when you tell them that's not okay, even if they're family." He nodded thoughtfully, then said, "I think I'm ready." "For what?" "To forgive Aunt Monica. Just quietly, not to see her. But I don't want to keep thinking about her when I'm trying to do cool stuff." I stared at him. "You're amazing," I said. "I know," he grinned. That night back home, we started putting together a scrapbook project for his health class, My Story, My Strengths. We pulled out photos, quotes, even some drawings Jessica helped him color. At the very end, he taped in the list from his closet, "Things I am allowed to say no to." And underneath it he wrote, "And things I am allowed to say yes to. My voice, my space, my dreams, my boundaries, my joy." As I looked at the page, I knew this chapter of our lives was closing not with vengeance, but with clarity. Because what happened at that amusement park was unforgivable. But what we built afterward, that was unforgettable. Thank you for staying with us through this journey. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe to support more voices like ours. If you've ever had to protect someone you love, even when it meant standing alone, drop your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. And remember, you are not overreacting, you are protecting. And that's the bravest thing of all.